Masayang morning, virtual learners. Welcome to Valenzuela Live, where chemistry is fun. This module will focus on recognizing the major categories of biomolecules such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Specifically, it will describe biomolecules and identify the different elements present in it. It also describes carbohydrates and its classification. It will also describe lipids and differentiate the two classes of lipids. And lastly, it will identify biomolecules based on the result of physical and chemical tests. Are you familiar with Go, Grow, and Glow foods? Great! I know that you already tackled this lesson back when you were in elementary. And to recall your knowledge about this classification of foods, let's have a game. All you need to do is to classify the foods that will be shown on your screen. Classify them according to Go, Grow, and Glow foods. Are you ready? Let's start. First one, we have fruits and vegetables. If you know the answer, don't hesitate to type it on the comment section below. If Glow food is your answer, then you are correct. Fruits and vegetables are examples of Glow food. Glow foods protect us from illness and keep our hair, skin, nails healthy. Next, we have meat, fish, and eggs. If Grow foods is your answer, then you are absolutely right. Meat, fish, eggs are examples of Grow foods. Grow foods help build our muscles. And lastly, we have bread, rice, and pasta. If Go food is your answer, double done, because you are also correct. These are all examples of Go food that give our body energy to do things. Do you know that the following foods that we talked about earlier have something to do with our topic today? The macronutrients that you get when you eat these Go, Grow, and Glow foods, such as carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, are biomolecules. When we say biomolecules or biological molecules, these are chemical compounds found in living organisms. These include chemicals that are composed mainly of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Biomolecules are the building blocks of life and perform important functions in living organisms. The biomolecules family includes carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. In today's lesson, we will give emphasis to the first two biomolecules, which are the carbohydrates and lipids. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the major source of energy for the body. It provides instant energy for the cells. Many people immediately think of bread, pasta, rice, and potatoes when someone says carbohydrate. And they are not wrong, but many other foods contain carbs too. Bread, rice, pasta, oats, even starchy vegetables such as potatoes, corns, and pumpkin, beans and pulses, sugar and honey, all of them contains carbs too. Carbohydrates are our body's preferred source of energy, so these macronutrients should make up a lot of our diet. In biochemistry, Carbohydrates are often called saccharides from the Greek word saccharon, meaning sugar, although not all the saccharides are sweet. Carbohydrates are biological molecules made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in a ratio of roughly 1 carbon atom. This composition gives carbohydrates their name. They are made up of carbon, from carbo, plus water, hydrate. Carbohydrates are classified as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Monosaccharides. Mono means one, saccharide means sugar. The simplest carbohydrates are called monosaccharides or simple sugars. They are the building blocks or monomers for the synthesis of polymers or complex carbohydrates. Monosaccharides have a formula of CH2OX and they typically contain 3 to 7 carbon atoms. Most of the oxygen atom in monosaccharides are found in hydroxyl group OH, but one of them is part of the carbonyl group. The position of the carbonyl group can be used to categorize the sugars. Remember, if the sugar has an aldehyde group, meaning that the carbonyl C is the last one in the chain, it is known as an aldose. Meanwhile, if the carbonyl C is internal to the chain, so that there are other carbons on both sides of it, it forms a ketone group, and the sugar is called a ketose. Sugars are also named according to their number of carbons. Some of the most common types are trioses, which is composed of 3 carbons. Another is pentoses, which consists of 5 carbons. And lastly, we have hexoses, which is composed of 6 carbons. One important monosaccharide is glucose, a 6-carbon sugar. Other common monosaccharides include galactose, which forms part of lactose, the sugar found in milk, and fructose, which is the sugar found in fruit. Next type of carbohydrate is known as disaccharides. Di means 2. Disaccharides form when 2 monosaccharides join together via a dehydration reaction, also known as condensation reaction or dehydration synthesis. In this process, the hydroxyl group of one monosaccharide combines with another hydrogen atom, releasing a molecule of water and forming a covalent bond known as glycosidic linkage. For instance, the diagram shows glucose and fructose monomers combining via dehydration reaction to form sucrose, a disaccharide we know as table sugar. Common disaccharides include lactose, maltose, and sucrose. The most common disaccharide is sucrose, or the table sugar, which is made of glucose and fructose. Lactose is a disaccharide consisting of glucose and galactose and is found naturally in milk. Many people can't digest lactose as adults, resulting in lactose intolerance, which you and your friends may be all too familiar with. And lastly, we have maltose or malt sugar. It is a disaccharide made up of 2 glucose molecules. And the last type of carbohydrates is known polysaccharides. Polysaccharide is a long chain of monosaccharides linked by glycosidic bonds Poly means many. The chain may be branched or unbranched and may contain different types of monosaccharides. Starch, glycogen, cellulose, and catein are some of the major examples of polysaccharides important in living organisms. Polysaccharides can serve many functions. One of them is for storage. For the storage polysaccharide, we have starch. Starch is a stored form of sugars in plants and is made up of mixtures of two polysaccharides, amylose and amylopectin, both polymers of glucose. Plants are able to synthesize glucose using energy gathered in photosynthesis, and the excess glucose beyond the plant's immediate energy needs is stored as starch in different plant parts, including their roots and seeds. That's great for plants, but what about us, humans? Glycogen. Glycogen is the storage form of glucose in humans and other vertebrates. Like starch, glycogen is a polymer of glucose monomers, and it is even more highly branched than amylopectin. Remember, glycogen is usually stored in liver and muscle cells. Whenever our blood glucose level decreases, glycogen is broken down via hydrolysis to release glucose monomers that cells can absorb and use. Another function of polysaccharide is to build or provide structure. And for that, we have cellulose. For example, is a major component of plant cell walls, which are rigid structures that enclose the cells and help make lettuce and other veggies crunchy. Wood and paper are mostly made of cellulose also. Now that you already know the different types of carbohydrates, let us now proceed to the second biomolecule, which is known as lipids. We sometimes talk about fat as if it were a malevolent substance bent on our dietary destruction. In reality, fats are elegant little molecules. They play essential roles in the biology of humans and other organisms. Fats are just one type of lipid, a category of molecules united by their inability to mix well with water. When we say lipids, lipids are a group of hydrophobic, meaning water-fearing or insoluble in water, biomolecules that play important role in living organisms. The primary function of lipids is for long-term energy storage. Lipids have the job of storing energy for later use. It stores energy in the form of fat molecules in the body to use later. Lipids also used as protection, insulation, and lubrication. It also acts as precursor for hormones and key components of cell membranes. They are classified as simple and complex lipids. Lipids, just like carbohydrates, are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And we have different types of lipids. The first one is known as fats. Fats are composed of a glycerol molecule and 3 fatty acid molecules. Just like all lipids, fat molecules are made up of elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Fat is used as energy storage in our bodies. Are all fats bad? What do you think? Great. The answer is no. As a matter of fact, fats are needed by our bodies to be healthy. We couldn't live without some fats in our diet. Most people need to get around 20 to 30% of their food from fats. However, remember, too much fat can be bad for you. It can cause you to be overweight and clog up your arteries. Fats are divided into two. We have saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Let's first discuss saturated fats. When we say saturated fats, these are solids at room temperature. These fats tend to come from foods like red meat, cheese, and butter. Saturated fats are sometimes called bad fats because they have been known to cause higher cholesterol, clog arteries, and even increase the risk for some cancers. Next, we have unsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats are liquids at room temperature. These fats tend to come from foods like nuts, vegetables, and fish. Unsaturated fats are considered much better for you than saturated fats and are sometimes called good fats. Next type of lipids is known as waxes. Waxes are similar to fats in their chemical makeup. However, they only have one long fatty acid chain. Waxes are soft and plastic at room temperature. They are produced by animals and plants and are typically used for protection. Plants use waxes to help prevent water loss. Meanwhile, us humans have wax in our ears to help protect our eardrums. Next type of lipid is known as steroids. Steroids are another major group of lipids. Steroids include cholesterol, chlorophyll, and hormones. Our bodies use cholesterol to make the hormones testosterone, which is a male hormone, and estrogen, which is a female hormone. Meanwhile, for plants, it has chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is used by plants to absorb light for photosynthesis. And lastly, we have phospholipids. When we say phospholipids, it's make up the fourth major group of lipids. They are very similar to fats in their chemical makeup. Phospholipids are one of the main structural components of all cell membranes. Now that we already know the lipids and their types, let us now proceed to the testing for the presence of biomolecules. First is the use of Benedict solutions to determine the presence of reducing sugar. One test for the presence of many simple carbohydrates is to use Benedict solution. Remember, in your experiment, changes in color from blue to green means that it has very small amount of reducing sugar. Meanwhile, if it changes in color from blue to yellow, it means that it has higher amount of reducing sugar. And lastly, if the color changes from blue to orange or red, it indicates that it has highest amount of reducing sugar present in the sample being tested. Next is the iodine solution. If iodine solution is added to a sample that contains starch, such as the bread in the picture above, the color will change from yellow to blue or black. Next, we have the ethanol solution. So this test is done to show the presence of lipids in a substance. If the substance is first dissolved in ethanol, this solution is then dissolved in water. If lipids are present in the mixture, it will precipitate and forms an emulsion. And for number 4, we have burette reagent. So we use burette reagent to detect the presence of proteins in the solution. So the reagent is pale blue when pure, remember? But when mixed with proteins, the resulting reaction produces a pale purple color. And lastly, we have we have the diphenylamine test. The presence of nucleic acid can be tested using diphenylamine test, or the SHAE, wherein in the presence of DNA, the clear solution will turn blue, and if RNA is present, the clear solution will turn green. It will be pointless to test for the presence since nucleic acids are pretty much found in all plants and animal matters. Before we end up our discussion, let's have a short activity. We all know that biomolecules are found in a variety of foods. On the given food below, identify which contain carbohydrates or lipids. So all you need to do is to write C for foods containing carbohydrates and L for lipids-rich food on the comment section below. I will be giving you 30 seconds to answer. Okay, time's up. For number 1, rice. Is it a carbohydrate or a lipid-rich food? If your answer is C for carbohydrates, then you are correct. How about number 2, butter? If you answered L for lipid, then you are also correct. For number 3, we have pasta. If you answered C for carbohydrates, then you are absolutely right. For number 4, we have bread. If you answered C for carbohydrates, then job well done. And lastly, we have olive oil. If you answer L for lipid-rich food, then you are amazing because you are correct. A job well done, students. And to summarize what we have discussed today, these are the important points that you need to remember. First, biomolecule is any molecule that is produced by living organisms, including large macromolecules such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Second, carbohydrates supply energy for the body and are the primary fuel source for the brain's high energy demands. They can be classified as monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Third, lipids store and supply energy for later use. They can be classified as simple and complex lipids. And lastly, the presence of biomolecules in substances can be detected using different physical and chemical tests. At this point, we will now proceed to the question and answer portion. You will be given 30 seconds to type your questions in the comment section below. Then our teacher moderator will help us gather your questions. And the timer starts now. Okay, time's up. Let me read your question. Okay. For the first question, it came from a learner of Linguna National High School. And the question is, why are lipids waterproof? That's a very good question. Okay? Lipids are waterproof because lipids are non-polar, remember, and water is polar. Lipids are not soluble in water. That means the lipid molecules and water molecules do not bond or share electrons in any way. the lipids just float in the water without blending into it. For the second question, it came from a learner of Wawampulo National High School, and the question is, what happens if I don't get enough carbohydrates? This is also a good question. Remember, carbohydrates are degraded into sugar, which as a primary energy source. It is required for the brain, muscles, and other parts of the human body to function normally. When you don't get enough carbohydrates, the level of sugar in your blood may drop to below the normal range, causing hypoglycemia. Your body then starts to burn fat for energy, leading to ketosis. Okay? Some of the symptoms of ketosis include mental fatigue, bad breath, nausea and headache, even painful swelling of the joints and kidney stones in severe ketosis. Okay? I hope I answered your questions correctly. That's all for today. I hope that you had a meaningful participation in today's discussion. Thank you and God bless. Padayon, great 10 students!